Hey, also, welcome back to the Defiant Spirit. I'm Baruch HaLevi, also known as B, and I am the creator of the Defiant Spirit and your guide in this podcast. I am delighted that you have tuned in. If it's your first time, you're a first time listener, welcome. I hope and pray you won't be disappointed. I'll give you the best of what I have to offer. And if you are a long time listener, well, thanks for sticking around. Gone through a little bit of, I don't know, iteration work on my business, on my brand, and my focus over the summer, as I've shared in the past couple podcasts with this new season, and really honing in on my passion of the Enneagram, which we'll talk about in a second, and also synthesizing, intersecting that with the work of Dr. Viktor Frankl, as you know, my teacher and mentor. I'm a logotherapist. Dr. Frankl, author of Man's Search for Meaning and 33 other books, father of logotherapy. Logos means meaning, purpose, essence, spirit, truth, all these kind of things. And when we have that in our lives, we have everything. That's what we need. Everything else beyond that is essentially a want, but we have meaning, we have everything. So the Defiance Spirit is now my work full time on guiding people to find meaning and purpose using the Enneagram. Now, if you don't know the Enneagram, you'll get a good sense of it by the end of this podcast. You can take an Enneagram assessment with me, or there's some online. I don't recommend the freebies. We'll talk about that. But it's an ancient personality, character roadmap. How we show up in the world or don't show up in the world is not who we are, it's what we do. And there's a huge difference. And that's what I want to talk about today. I want to get into, I'll share with you, if for those of you who are watching on video, I have a slide up. And those of you who aren't watching on video, I'm happy to get you the slides. So just shoot me an email at b@mysoulcentered.org, mysoulcentered.org. Okay, so we're going to jump in today to our topic, the Enneagram, the Defiant Spirit, and your superpower. The reason why I want to start here in this new season, last couple podcasts I've been talking big picture around finding your why, which is essentially Viktor Frankl work. And I forgot what the other podcast was, but also big picture. I want to get into the Enneagram. But before we fully immerse in the technical aspects of the Enneagram, let's start with superpowers. Why? Because superpowers are real, right? You have superpowers. The challenge is that we've relegated superpowers to Superman and Wonder Woman and fiction and fantasy, when in fact we have superpowers. Also, forgive the noise in the background. We have some construction going on in our home, and I'm broadcasting from my home studio, so you'll bear with me. Hopefully, it's not too loud. The superpowers that we see, shooting laser beams and flying, defying physics and all that, that's not the superpowers I'm talking about. I'm talking about what I believe the Enneagram addresses incredibly well is the superpower of our particular type, our superpower, right? If you're an X-Men, you're going to have, Wolverine has his claws and whatever. Watch X-Men, they all have different superpowers. You have your particular superpower. Now, there's 9 basic genres or categories, but as you've learned or you will learn, there are 27 subtypes. There are actually 54 when you start looking at wings. There are hundreds and thousands of combinations, but there are 9 primary energies or superpowers. Now, superpower, what I mean by that is really literally supernatural. What is supernatural? Nature. What is nature? Nature is the laws of, the world around us, the laws of the universe, reality. And yet we can go beyond our nature. We can go beyond the wiring, the hardware system that is you, that is me. We can transcend it. We can defy it. That's why I call this the defiant spirit, because when we access this deeper place, we can transcend, we can go above go above natural, beyond our nature. So your nature is to be an 8 like me, which is the challenger. It's very kind of hard fighting, challenging, as the name suggests, intense type. I, for a long time, told myself that's who I was. But I've learned to defy my nature. That is supernatural. And when I have seen the most heroic moments in my life, and I've been witness to so many amazing lives. When I was a rabbi, I would officiate at funerals or life cycle events, and I would just get to see the best of humanity in some of those moments, also the worst, but people who just defied their nature, who overcame addictions, who overcame whatever physical or emotional or spiritual liability they inherited and defied it. We love watching movies about the defiant spirit, about people who are almost supernatural or who are supernatural, but we marvel at their accomplishments, at their achievements. So the Enneagram is all about your superpower and really honing in on that and owning it and living it and learning to access all 9 fundamental superpowers, but you have your go-to. Why am I starting here? Because I had a conversation a few days ago with a prospective client. I'm, as I mentioned, only working now really in the space of the Defiant Spirit, offering a high-level Enneagram assessment. I'd prefer you not take any than take a bad one, because it's a little, nothing bad's going to happen to you, but it's a little off-putting. It's probably not accurate. If it is, it's such broad strokes, it's not helpful. I use an Enneagram online assessment called IEQ9 or Integrative Enneagram. It is by far the premium Enneagram assessment on the market. There's not a close second. I mean, it's not cheap. You get what you pay for, but it's thorough. It's driven by data, by science. It's really a remarkable assessment. Then I take that, I turn it into a personalized report, and now I have my Defiant Spirit ebooks. I have 9 of them, and I send you your particular type, your core type, your ebook, and we get on a call together. And it's really a magnificent experience, if I do say so myself. But I'm speaking from the other side of witnessing people wake up to the Enneagram and the powers, the roadmap that it can provide in living out your superpower. Now, I say this because a couple of days ago, a woman really challenged me from the outset. She'd taken a bunch of Enneagram assessments. She didn't like her type or what was brought back to her as her type. She didn't think it was who she was. And she jumped right into, 9. Everybody tells me I'm a 9 because I'm sloth-like. I'm inactive in certain ways in my life. It's not true, by the way. 9s are not slothful, whatever that means. We'll get into that. But what she said was she started listing all of the liabilities of that particular energy, that particular number. And I said, whoa, 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 let's, back up, zoom out, because although I want to, look at some of the liabilities, the challenges that our number presents to us, that's sort of like going on a date and focusing on everything that's wrong. I can promise you that that won't be an inspired date. It probably won't turn into date number 2, and certainly won't make it for a lasting marriage. Now, there are things that are wrong is not the right word. There are things that are imperfect, things that are challenging in our partners, in our life partner. I mean, not in me, but in Ariella. Just kidding. She'll be the first to tell you that I have a long laundry list of imperfections. But people aren't a la carte. We don't pick and choose off the shelf of what we'll take a little of this and a little less of that. But we also don't lead with the liabilities. We don't lead with the negative. If you are attracted to somebody, if you like somebody, you first start there, and then you move in together and you find out they don't put the toilet seat down, then they don't put the cap up back on the toothpaste. So it's just theoretical, by the way. So we start with, at least I start with in the Enneagram, not the liabilities, but the superpower. These aren't technically named as superpowers in the Enneagram, but after tremendous research and immersion in the Enneagram, I don't think anybody who's listening is going to argue that these are fundamental elements, essence. I like to call it superpower. I think it's more fun and honestly true. And I'm putting them up here. So we're going to just do all 9. And then over the course of the year, we're going to be going through all 9 one by one. So maybe next week we'll start with 8 or 9 or 1, and then the following 2 and 3 and 4. But I want to start macro with the Enneagram superpowers of all 9 types. So in the remaining time we have together, which is another 3 hours and 37 minutes, just kidding. I said, I'm retired as a rabbi. I'm not going to speak until everybody leaves. That's what clergy are known to do. We're going to just touch on the fundamental superpowers of each Enneagram type. Now, I'll start at the top of the Enneagram. Different times start at different places, but I think it makes the most sense when talking about superpowers to start with 9. Why 9? Because at least from a spiritual perspective, and that's my orientation to the world, that's my training. I have a doctoral degree in pastoral counseling, in divinity, and so just see the world through that lens immediately or initially. And I see the Enneagram certainly through that lens because it's a deeply spiritual roadmap. The 9, from a mystical perspective, is where divinity, where God, where creation began in this world. It enters in through the crown chakra from the chakra system, but from the top as this kind of pure energy. And then it starts to get refracted and diluted in a world of conflict, world of challenge, where we can't remain right in this theory, in this ethereal place called 9. Now, 9 is oftentimes called the peacemaker. I have it up here if you can read that. And this is, in my experience and in guiding people, one of the easier types to notice. And I don't even need to necessarily get into a conversation to know that I'm in the presence of a 9. Now, I'll say it 1,000 times, you're not a 9. If I do say that, it's just sort of a slip of the tongue or just, the way we communicate, but you're not a 9. You react like a 9. You respond like a 9. My entire philosophy, the theology, and Enneagram system is built on Viktor Frankl's idea between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space lies our power to choose our response. And so, it's all about reaction and response. When I'm reacting, I'm on autopilot. I'm unconscious. I'm just going through the motions. And when I respond, I take back my power. And the only power you have in this lifetime is the power to choose your response to your circumstances. You don't control the circumstances. You don't control anybody around you. You don't control what life presents to you. You control how you respond to those circumstances. And that's authentic power. So you are not a 9. You may react like a 9. You may respond like a 9. You can learn to go to all of these numbers. And there are certain patterns that are more natural based on your hardware, your wiring, the way you are showing up in the world. And that's what these lines are. We'll get into it another time, but there's a natural kind of pattern. You can follow these lines from your number, and there's always 2 lines coming out of a number, sort of a positive and negative charge. And you can also really draw upon the wings, which are on either side of your core type. And you can learn to develop all these numbers because they're all in you. You have just rank ordered them from top to bottom. And think of it as your go-to strategy in surviving and thriving. And if you're a core type 9, that means that's your basic survival strategy, not who you are. So what does that mean? And we're going to start again with not liabilities, but assets, benefits, blessings, superpowers. 9 is pure essence, pure love, pure whatever you want to call it, God, oneness, the universe, right? The universe is one verse, song. It's just this oneness, this unbrokenness, no differentiation. You know that place when you're in it. I am sure you've been in a moment of, call it flow. The mystics, the Kabbalists call it shefa. In psychology, it's more called flow, but you know it when you're in it. And I'm sure you've experienced it. That's that 9 quality. Now, there are some people who just roll that way, who operate that way. When they're responding, right, they're choosing. Sometimes when they're reacting, they're going to that space because it's not a superpower, it's a survival technique. I have a daughter who's a 9. I have a sister who reacts and responds like a 9. I would say 30%, 40% of my clients are 9s, a lot of 9s in my life. So I see it when I'm around them. Actually, I feel it when I'm around them. And 9 is part of the body gut triad, 8, 9, and 1. So it's more of a resonance quality. It's more of a feeling, whereas 2, 3, and 4 are more emotion based, and 5, 6, 7 are more mental, intellectual. But 9 is part of this gut instinct body, and you can feel a 9's presence. You can feel a sense of peacefulness around a healthy 9. They're the type of person who walks into the room and you can feel the barometer of tension kind of drop. They are reluctant to get into a fight, and we'll talk about that from a negative side at some point. But part of that is they just know they've tasted this flow, this peace, this harmony, and that's a superpower. They bring that to conversations. It is so easy to be around a responding, responsive 9. It's a pleasure. It's rejuvenating. My sister talks sometimes about, my sister Rebecca Rosen's a well-known psychic medium. She talks a lot about psychic vampires. And there are people in our lives who are more like psychic vampires, where you just walk away and you feel drained. You feel depleted. It doesn't mean they're a bad person. They're just low functioning. They're reactive. They're not operating at the high side of their type in their life. I don't know if I know any 9s who are psychic vampires, who are draining. Now, they can be draining in a different way when they don't step up to the plate, when you can't get them moving because of this inaction around conflict. But again, another conversation for another time. In general, 9s just radiate a sense of peace, a sense of harmony, and they bring down tension level in our life. Okay, yeah, it's so hard for me not to also look at the shadows, because everything is light and dark. That's the way the universe is built. That's the way we're built. That's the way the Enneagram operates. It's not about getting rid of your shadow and just choosing light. That's garbage, new agey, toxic positivity. What we're talking about is owning the whole thing, owning the shadows, going into the shadows so you can get into the light, so you can expand the light. It's a circle. Circles expand in one direction. If it's a true circle, it expands in all directions. So we will explore the shadows, but I got to force myself not today. I'm built for shadows. It's kind of harder for me to talk about the light. Okay, so that's 9, superpower of peace, harmony, love, all of those things wrapped up into one, and that's 9 energy, 9 superpower. Again, it might be your primary superpower. You might have that ability. We all have it. Some of us just have it at our kind of fingertips. Some of us just do it naturally, but others maybe have it as a second place or third place or bottom. You can still access it. The question is, right, where is it in you and how hard is it to access? And do we need to develop it? Yes, we all need 9 energy. That was a water break, excuse me. Okay, moving from left to right. That's the direction we move in the Enneagram traditionally, though you could go the other direction. 9 to 1. 1 is called the reformer. Sometimes it's called the perfectionist, though perfectionist has a negative connotation. So I like reformer. The 1 is incredibly detail-oriented person. This is a person who cares about those details of life, who pays attention to the minutia when others walk on by. They're perhaps the most conscientious of all Enneagram types, certainly if not the most responsible, one of the most responsible types. They are here for something bigger than themselves. They naturally gravitate towards service and duty and honor and principles. They're value-based human beings. Some of the greatest reformers in human history have been ones like Gandhi and Mandela, Margaret Thatcher. There are so many important figures in human history who have been this one quality, because it is about just fundamental human decency. Again, many, many shadows for each of these types, but the superpower, as I understand it, as I've experienced it, my son's a 1. I do have quite a few clients who are 1s. They are, again, with this principle, value, drive, comes a sense of goodness. And that's the word I choose for the superpower of a 1. If 9 is peacefulness, 1 is goodness. Now, I don't mean good as in goody two shoes. They can be that, but that's a reactive 1. That's not a responsive highest level. Think Mandela 1. Goodness is, I like the Hebrew word that the Kabbalists use, which is tov. And tov doesn't mean good as in good and bad. Tov means I'm going to have to sneeze in a second. What do you do when you're on air and you have to sneeze and you don't have a sound guy or gal? I guess I'll just have to mute it. It's going away. Goodness, a tov is constructive repair. It's the opposite of destructive. In Kabbalah, there's ra, which means destruction. We translate it as evil, but it just means to break apart. So tov means constructive. It means to repair, to make whole. And if you meet ones, they have this desire to repair themselves, others, and it can slip into a negative, into perfectionism. But at its fundamental kind of drive, it's the superpower that we can be whole again. And so they spend their lives in Kabbalah, it's called tikkun olam, repairing the world. It can be their personal inner world, and they can be very hard on themselves about this, but it can be their relationship, their families. They're just repair agents. And that's what I mean by goodness. It's good. And that's also their work, by the way, is to get over perfection and embrace goodness, because perfection is unobtainable. Is that a word? Unobtainable? Unobtainable in this lifetime. It's not going to happen. But goodness, right, is messy perfection. And so the work of the one is really to embrace messy perfection. Good enough is a mantra a one might need to take on. So if you're a one, your superpower is goodness, and all of us have one within us, and we can all access it in different ways. We'll talk about that another time. Enneagram number 2 is the helper. The helper is my number 1, so to speak, type client. I'd say 1s and 9s make up a good percentage of my peeps, my tribe, my Enneagram Defiant Spirit tribe. So I know 2s really well. My mom is a 2. I know so many 2s. You know so many 2s. You can't really live in this world, at least not fully, and feeling supported without a 2 or many 2s in your life. So they're the helper. But it just reduces, right? Some of these labels, they're old, or they're reductionistic, according to Frankl. They reduce somebody to a helper. Like, I don't know if helper does justice to it. There's a helping quality, but it's much deeper than that. The superpower, anyways. The superpower of a 2 is intimacy. And we say this word intimacy today, and we think of almost sexuality or erotic eros love, according to Plato, right? A romantic type love. And that's not intimacy. That's a form of intimacy, but intimacy is seeing other people. I love my teacher of blessed memory, Wayne Dyer, who said intimacy, see me. It's that movie, Avatar. If you didn't see Avatar, I love Avatar. I reference it a lot. Can't wait for the Avatar 2 and 3 to come out soon. They end, or they say hello and goodbye by saying, I see you. And to me, that's intimacy, to see somebody, not to see them through your eyes, to see them through their eyes, to truly see them and to be seen. And 2s have this superpower. They just have a sixth sense, being able to see others, anticipate the needs of others, truly understand others, and sometimes better than that person understands themselves, which can get a 2 into trouble, and oftentimes better than they know themselves, which can also get them into trouble. You can hear a lot of podcasts coming up with lots of shadow work, but for now, it's enough to rest on superpower of intimacy. This is so important if you're a 2, more than any other type, because 2s are the most sensitive of all the Enneagram types. When they get their assessment back, if they're a 2, it's like 90% light, 10% dark, but all they can do is focus on the dark and tell me about how painful it is to read some of the shadows of their type. I always know when I'm talking to a 2 in the initial calls, because they're the ones who have what somebody out there calls the ick factor. Enneagram teacher calls it, I think it was Richard Rohr, great man, Father Richard Rohr. And the ick factor is, I don't want this type. I'll trade it out for any other type. It's just not the way it works. It's our wiring. There's more good than bad, but there is some, of course, shadow work with the 2. And that's what they end up seeing. And I always start with 2s and their superpower of intimacy, because without that superpower, the world, if it does exist, it's not one I want to live in. Number three, Enneagram number three, the achiever. The achiever is like it sounds. And you know when you're with an achiever pretty quickly because they have this drive, perhaps the most driven, maybe other than eight in the Enneagram system. They have a drive to achieve, to conquer, to win. Now, again, shadows, yes, many, but and oftentimes I would say threes are the whipping boy of the Enneagram. They get abused quite a bit, and they're in a difficult situation because we live in a three culture. America is a three country. So it's almost like it's their drug of choice and they're around it all day, every day, and they're bred to win. Then they win. And then we mock them or scoff at them, or, we snicker behind their back. Even if they win, and, they have to own their stuff. They can become arrogant and, just untouchable. They're the winners. They're the prom king and queen and Super Bowl, victory, Tom Brady types. Tom Brady's a three. Lots of the superstars are threes. But their superpower is not about trophies. And when I work with threes, albeit not all that often, they don't always seek me out, but the few that I have, and my good friend, Michael Feiner of Feiner Wealth, who I work with on the Enneagram, we're developing some programs. He's a three. Responsive, high functioning threes like Michael, they're not winning. They're not interested in winning. Maybe that was a thing back in the day, but now it's about victory, and not victory as in, bringing home the trophy. Victory from a deeper level. I love the word. I was going to put it on here. Invictus. From I don't know where it's from, but I learned about it a long time ago in a poem by William Henley, who wrote a poem called Invictus, and it was made famous by Nelson Mandela, who carried it with him on Robben Island for 26, 27 years while he was there. And it's all about true power, and that power that comes from within, of conquering our obstacles, our impediments in our lives to become bigger, to become better, to become more authentic, like the neighbor of the four. So that's really what a three is about. And when you're with a three, you can feel them almost carrying you across the finish line, because it's no longer about them winning. It's about true victory, which is about them. It's about the people around them. When you have a three in your corner in your life, you just feel like you're going to cross the finish line, whatever that means. And that's true victory. That's a three. Okay. Four. Four is the individualist, at least in my system. It's called romantic in other systems, creative or artist. It's also, they're all unique types. Some of them are just easier to pick out. I'd say for me, fours are among the easier, tend to be easier. They're very expressive. They're emotional. They're just in touch with their inner life like no other type. So my son, my youngest son, Aviv, is a four, and he's 11, but I hope my other kids aren't listening. He's emotionally more in touch, more sophisticated than the other three combined. He'll get into these deep emotional exploration conversations with myself or with Ariella, and I'm just baffled by how sophisticated he is. And that's part of the four superpower. There's this connection to depth. That could have been the name of it, depth, authenticity, where they're authentic. There's no mask. Now there can be that's in the purest form, like all these superpowers. It can degenerate into something far less than that, but at its heights, right? Supernatural, above and beyond the best. This four brings that authenticity to the surface with no mask, with no barrier. Here's who I am, holistic, right? Inside meets outside meets life. They're not adapting or changing for anybody. And that's art. That's why many fours are artists expressing the depths of who they are onto canvas or big screen or out in the world. They can lose themselves. Many of those fours have lost themselves, but at the deepest, purest level, authenticity, might call it intuition, but you get the flavor of the superpower of the four. Five. Five is the investigator. Five is the most analytical, thinking focused of all the types. 5, 6, and 7 are all thinkers, but 5 really goes inwards. 4 goes inwards and 9 go inwards. So there's 3 inward facing types. 5 is the most inward in my experience of all 3 of these and all 9 in general. And they go into thought. Again, shadows, yes, but superpower, there is a capacity for, I call it mastery. Mastery, not just like being smart, not understanding. Those are degrees of mastery, but mastery is, think of Yoda. Yoda is a quintessential 5. There's this simplicity to Yoda. The Buddha is another, well, I mean, he didn't take a test, at least not with me, but he represents a 5. Buddhism really represents a 5-ish kind of flavor or vibe. And it's because it's gone in through thought and transcended thought. So it's not even just thinking, it's what's beyond thinking, this level of mastery. The Matrix, if you've seen the movie, on the other side of Neo's journey is really that mastery when he starts to see really what the world is. As an aside, what's his name? Keanu Reeves is a 5. He plays 5s oftentimes. That's usually what happens in movies. We'll do a whole talk on that, or when actors play their Enneagram type. So 5s are cerebral, but that's just a pathway to get to this owning inside and out a topic, a subject. And when you've ever been around a master, it's just energizing, it's liberating, it's illuminating. And that's another word I could have put for superpower, because 5s have this ability to illuminate darkness for us, almost like when you flip a light switch on in a room and you go, oh my god, like this is the layout of the hotel room that I just bumped into because I thought I was at home and I couldn't find the bathroom. You had that experience. It's so overwhelming experience. Flip on the lights, is, oh, this is how the system is laid out. That's what 5s have the ability to do like no other type. 6, the loyalist, sometimes called the loyal skeptic, sometimes called the devil's advocate. 6 is also a thinking type, but a more of a challenging thinking, more of a probing, questioning, angsty kind of a thinking. Again, shadows, yes, but superpower. Well, 6s are complex, probably the most complex of all Enneagrams, and really the hardest for me to pinpoint. Most people, hardest to locate a 6 and label them. 6s have 2 core superpowers. I could have put both of them. One is kind of this challenging, questioning piece, probing piece, and the other is commitment, loyalty, duty. They connect to an idea or to a cause or to a person, and they attach themselves as a servant at the deepest capacity, not like a slave, but I'm here to serve. It's this longing to support, to be the foundation for other people, and to further a cause. So both this loyalty, this devotion, I call them in my Lead 360 program, the devoted leader. They're the most devoted of any type. When you have a 6, if you don't betray their trust, you have them for life. Oftentimes I think of a dog can be a 6-like quality, right? This loyalty, unconditional, unwavering support. And also, but that translates sometimes to an idea. So they'll get their mind wrapped around something and they'll just keep going at it and challenging it. That's the probing piece, right? But they're just dedicated to that plan or to that line of attack. They're the ones who were prepared for COVID because they had plan A, B, C. They had already thought through all this. So they were loyal to that kind of thinking or reasoning, probably had all the toilet paper, them in the 5s. So lots of shadow sides, but the upside, the superpower, is this duty, this loyalty, and this kind of unwavering quality. 7, Enneagram 7 is called the enthusiast. This one is, it was an easy superpower to name. Although I did kind of come down to 2. One of them could have been freedom, because 7s are free. They're free spirits. They don't want to be shackled. They have this desire to experience life. This is the experiential type. This is the type that doesn't want to sit in a classroom, but needs to get out on a field trip. They want to take it all in. They want to drink it in, and they want to take others along for the ride, and they do. At a deeper level, though, than just kind of road trip, which is sometimes how they get painted into a corner, what 7s are really doing, in my humble opinion, is the origins of this word enthusiasm. En, which is within, and theos, which is God or divine. So it's the divine from within. And they get confused, especially in younger years, and they think that they're looking for divinity, for illumination, for inspiration, for experience out in the world. What they find, lots of shadows along the way, is no matter how much they look out in the world, they never find it. And when they stop and when they find it within, they just have a light like no other type. A friend of mine, Laura, is a 7. And I just sent her a text saying, you're an illuminating person, presence. Everybody I talk to has been touched by her light. Like, I know who I am. That's not me. I got my qualities. I'm not light, literally LIGHT, or, LITE, like this lighter. No, they're a light energy. It's lighter, and they illuminate for others. And it's joy. It's fun. You can feel the radiance of that 7 energy. We need 7s in our life. We need them all. But that's a superpower that a 7 really has access to. And last but not least, my reactive and responsive type, the Enneagram 8. Enneagram 8 is called the Challenger, and it is challenging. We can be the most challenging, difficult type, bar none. Many shadows to talk about, but today on Superpowers, I put this one as sovereignty. I put power, but power just has such a thin or negative connotation. It just feels abusive in this day and age. It feels ego driven. Sovereignty. Think of a sovereign nation. Think of, what Ukraine is fighting for right now. Their sovereignty. It's autonomy. It's power. It's the right to self-expression, the commitment to that, to make a stand, that, what Dr. Frankl calls the defiant power of the human spirit, to make a defiant stand in your life. This is 8 superpower. 8s live for doing this in their life. I mean, again, it can be very reactive and destructive, but at the highest level, 8s, when they know what they stand for, they make a stand. They're just infectious. They're the ones who start rebellions. I imagine most of history's rebellions against abuse of power were, if not started by 8s, certainly supported by 8s. In my program, I have the protest fist as very 8ish. And so they're revolutionaries fighting against abuse of power, and really longing for personal sovereignty of their own lives. If you take away my control, I can't breathe. You can take away fun from my life. You can take away victory from my life. You can't take away control without me suffocating. And that's how you know it's your superpower, by the way. As you go through these and you're listening, of course they're all in you. But if everything's number 1, nothing's number 1. So maybe you want to go back through and rank order these based on this slide. How would you rank order them? And then see how it matches up to the assessment that I've given you if you've already taken one, or get in touch with me and we can look at it. I bet you can intuit a good flavor and feel for the 9 Enneagram types and how you rank them in your profile just by going through this alone. Maybe that's the sovereignty piece of me, but I don't think you need an assessment to understand the Enneagram, certainly, and to figure out your type. Now, I do think it offers incredible and invaluable data and analytics and direction. But again, this is you. This is your path, your roadmap. And those are really the 8 superpowers. So if you're new to the Enneagram, start there. Start with superpowers. Go on the first date and focus on what you have in common, and share dreams and hopes and what you can offer each other, and not the toothpaste cap and the toilet seat up. That'll come later. You'll be challenged by the Enneagram for sure, just like my wife is challenged by me. But if it's going to be a deep relationship, it can't just be all roses and, rainbows, 9s. You got to have some challenge, some conflict, but it also can't just be conflict and challenge. 8s, you need some roses and rainbows along the way. These are the superpowers of the Enneagram. If you want to learn more about me, if you want to learn more about the Defiant Spirit, or to purchase the Enneagram and the Defy Your Number program, jump over to defiantspirit.org. I have a new website coming very soon with my new branding and colors and focus. And most of all, the offering, which is to welcome you and to educate you and to help liberate you through the pathway of Dr. Viktor Frankl, logotherapy, and the Enneagram, and that is the Defiant Spirit. I look forward to talking to you next time. Until then, defy your number and live your spirit.